How's it going, guys? Public Safety Network here. I'm going to be doing a video today on note taking. I think it's probably one of the skills that security and other types of public safety personnel lack the most. A lot of times we don't see ourselves as report writers, and so therefore we don't believe we need to take good notes when we come across incidents. And so I'm going to kind of show you today different methods of note taking, and then ways that you could possibly take good notes in order to make reports better. If this video does well, I'll probably do an entire one on report writing itself for the security and public safety field. So let's go ahead and get into it, guys. So the biggest thing for me is when I take notes is I use these note cards. The one reason I love note cards so much is the fact that they're a lot cleaner and easily disposable than notebooks. I always hated when notebooks would, when you tear out pages and there'd be little crinkles left, and I just felt it was really messy. And so I switched to note cards, and I just clipped everything together. Not only do I have my note cards in here, I also have FI cards, trespass forms, and medical refusal cards. If your company doesn't utilize trespass cards or medical refusal cards, I suggest they do. They're very, very helpful, especially when it comes to incidents. When you have to trespass someone, you have the card with their signature on it, stating that they were formally told that they were not allowed to be here per whatever statute your state says under trespassing. Then you can include that with the report, and then if they ever try to come back and saying, well, I didn't know that, I'm like, well, here's your signature on this card stating that you knew you weren't supposed to be here. Same with medical refusal cards. If you ever go to a medical call where it's something very minor, medical refusal card is a great way to cover your butt, in the sense that saying that they're like, oh, well, I wanted to go to the hospital, but security wouldn't call them for me, and I'm like, no, this card says that you refused medical attention. So it's more of a way to kind of cover your butt in that sense. So why do we take notes? The reason we take notes is because at some point in your security, public safety, law enforcement career, whatever, you're going to have to write a report. Whether it's a slip and fall, whether it's a theft, if you're law enforcement, whether it could be a burglary, it could be a murder, whatever. You're going to have to write a report at some point, and your notes are going to dictate how well that report is going to be. If you take really, really detailed notes, meeting all the criteria, then you're probably going to write a really, really good report. If you take horrible notes, then your report is going to be laughed at if it ever has to go to court. And if you write bad reports, you better pray to God that it never ends up there. So the question is, how do you take good notes? The biggest thing is everyone remembers from English class onwards, from elementary all the way up to college, the who, what, when, where, why, how. Now, almost all of those are very key when it comes to report writing, except for maybe why, because especially in the security field, the fact that we're not doing a lot of investigation, so a lot of times when we come across something, we're not going to know the why, but making sure we have the who, what, when, where, and then the how are the most key aspect. So obviously, who is self-explanatory. Who were the parties involved? Who was the suspect? Who was the victims? Were there any witnesses? Were there other, officers present? Things like that are all going to be things that need to be included in your report. So making sure that you have the who is most important. Now, you don't have to get crazy. If you show up to a medical call and there's 30 people standing around, you're probably not going to need to get all of their information. You're probably just going to get the information of the person that injured themselves, and then most likely the people that saw it happen. But you just kind of have to be reasonable with the information that you feel you're going to need for your report. The what happened, obviously, is again self-explanatory. You want to know in layman's terms in your report what happened. You don't need to make it super complicated. You just pretty much need to write it as if a regular person was reading this. If you handed a regular person who had never worked a day of security or law enforcement or whatever in their lives, and you handed them your report, they could read it and tell you what happened. When is also very important, guys. You need to make sure that your dates and times are accurate. If I get lucky enough that I have a dispatch center that logs anytime I call anything in, so that kind of gives me some leeway. But don't, if you have a dispatch center, don't always rely on their notes. Make sure you're keeping track of important times of when it happened, you know, when certain critical events happened, and the times that they happened. You need to make sure you're as accurate as possible. A lot of times too, I'll include the day of the week it is, because if someone says, you know, it's on such and such date, I may not remember the date, but then, you know, or I may make an error in my report and say on this date and time, but then they're like, well, it happened on this day of the week, and, you know, it kind of covers your butt type thing. The where it happened, you know, when it comes to where, you want to be pretty specific. You know, if you have a complete address, that's great. If not, if it happens where there maybe necessarily is an address, but there's like an intersection or there's like key landmarks, you kind of just going to have to work with what you get. But obviously having a complete address is the ideal situation. And then the how, guys. If something happens, you should probably find out how it happened. Whether it's an assault, a break-in, whatever, you should figure out how this at least happened, because, you know, they may want to know how can we prevent this from happening again. So those are all the kind of basics you need when it comes to note-taking. When it comes to note-taking, guys, obviously you're not going to be able to take down word for word what someone is saying. You're going to have to learn to shorthand everything, but you need to be able to read your own shorthand. So if you're going to abbreviate, things of that nature, you're going to need to be able to make it short enough where you can write quickly, but easy enough so that when you're writing a report, you can remember what that abbreviation is. It's very, very important that you take thorough notes, but you also need to get it done quickly, because you may have 8 people to interview, and if each one of their statements, you know, is pages and pages long, it's going to take you a really long time to write that report, because you're going to have problems discerning what you need to know versus what you don't need to know. And that's kind of what notes are for. Notes are for taking down information that you're going to need for this report later. Things like the person's name, things like their address, their phone number, in case you need to get in contact with them again. You know, everything you probably find on a driver's license. For me personally, my department allows us to take photos of driver's license for reports, and so I don't a lot of times have to write down their information. It's already on the driver's license. The only thing I would probably need to do is take down like phone numbers and contact information. But obviously, if you aren't allowed to do that, because I know some departments or agencies or companies don't want you to do that, then your next best bet is probably to just write down all of the information on a card. But remember, guys, only take down pertinent information. You don't need to know what they ate for lunch that day, you know, unless it's somehow relevant to whatever call you're on. But just taking down important information that is going to be transferred to your report. Pretty much, if you wouldn't want to see it in a report, then it doesn't need to be in your notes. That's about really all I have for you guys right now. I'm guaranteed there's probably a ton more I could go on a topic. So if the people actually really like this video, I'll probably end up making a part 2. And again, if also I get a lot of likes and comments and wanting more videos, then I'll probably do a one on report writing, because it seems to be that's where a lot of security lack is, that they don't know how to write detailed reports when it comes for them to actually have to write one. So go ahead and subscribe, guys. Give me a like. Leave your feedback, if what you liked about the video, if you didn't like something, or if you completely disagree with me. You know, let me know, because you know, don't take everything I say as gospel. I mean, you don't know who I am. Like, you can say this guy's an idiot. But thanks, guys, for watching, and I hope you stay tuned for future videos.